How's it going, everybody? Handsome Dan here with the final episode of the Grand Tournament, episode 13. If you made it this far, thank you for being along for the ride, but if you're new to this series or only just joining us a few episodes ago, be sure to catch up on all the previous games by checking out the full playlist below. Before we get started, I'm happy to announce that Season 2 of the Grand Tournament will be starting soon. We'll begin after the release of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, so look forward to 4 new competitors playing a brand new set of decks. We also have a little bit of bonus content planned for Season 1, so if you want to catch some more action, make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when the next set of videos are released. With those announcements out the way, let's go ahead and look at the scoreboard. Since this is the last game of the series, this means that all 4 of us are tied up at 3 games apiece. There's no more politics, no more second chances. Everything from this point is every man for himself, and at the end of it all, we'll crown our champion for Season 1. Let's get to the starting hands now to see what we're working with for the last game. Caleb and Golos have gotten oh so close in a number of games, but everyone's wised up to what the deck is capable of and have taken extra measures to stop him. We'll see if we can get off to a faster start this time, keeping a Ketria Triome, Circuitous Route, Raminep Excavator, Forest, Life from the Loam, Diabolic Revelation, and Sky Shroud Ranger. Derek's bringing Hogaak back as his last chance to claim the crown. He got to show off what the deck is capable of last time, but he faltered a little bit in the mid-game and failed to close it out. We'll see if this time he can keep Hogaak rolling, as he keeps a starting hand with a Windswept Heath, Strip Mine, Winding Way, Buried Alive, Stinkweed Imp, Sky Shroud Claim, and a Disciple of Golos. After pulling out a come from behind victory last game, I'm ready to try to close out this tournament with Awaken the Blood Avatar. My goal is to make a bunch of tokens to sacrifice and make as many Blood Avatars as possible, swinging them out until I'm the only one left standing. My starting hand has a Siphon Mine, Temple of Silence, Sacred Foundry, Lightstep Pathway, Reiterate, Orzhov Signet, and Administrative Obligation. Finally, Jelly's back with Talrand for the umpteenth time, ready to see if this time is going to be the right one for the Drake army to rise. There have been some momentary flashes of brilliance for Talrand, but Jelly's going to need to piece all of them together to make some magic happen for this final game. Jelly keeps 2 islands, Serum Visions, Squelch, Treasure Cruise, Reconnaissance Mission, and Rapid Hybridization. Caleb wins the pregame die roll, so he'll be going first. Caleb starts us off with a Ketria Triome tapped, and then passes. I'll play a Temple of Silence, which comes in tapped and lets me scry 1 to the top. Derek plays a Windswept Heath, and then passes over to Jelly. Jelly now plays a Flooded Strand, and both he and Derek crack their fetches, with Jelly getting an island, and Derek getting a tapped Overgrown Tomb. Jelly then casts Serum Visions, and then passes. Over to Caleb, who drops down a Forest, and then plays a Sky Shroud Ranger. On my turn, I'll shotgun a Sacred Foundry, and then tap down to cast an Orzhov Signet. Derek plays a Swamp, and then casts Winding Way, naming lands. He'll end up getting a Mosswort Bridge and a Misty Rainforest to hand. He also manages to get a Stinkweed Imp into his graveyard whenever he discards down for turn. Jelly plays an island as land for turn, and then passes. We now move back to Caleb, who casts an empty Life from the Loam after missing a land drop, and then he'll pass as well. I'll start preparing for next turn by playing a Seer Step Pathway, then play a Ministrative Obligation. I'll get ready to kill it off by playing a Skull Clamp, and then I'll pass. Derek plays the Misty Rainforest on his turn, which gets him a Bloodghast back from his graveyard. He then casts the Fauna Shaman, then realizes that he forgot to dredge his Stinkweed Imp before passing. Jelly's only play is to drop an island on his turn, and he's done after that. Caleb's going to open up his turn by dredging Life from the Loam, and then cast it to get 2 swamps back from his graveyard. He'll play 1 as land for turn, and then activate the Sky Shroud Ranger to drop down a 2nd. Over to me now, where I'll equip the Ministrative Obligation with the Skull Clamp, which kills it and lets me draw 2 cards and make 2 spirits.
Hey, what a spirit? Hey, do we got a spirit NFT?
No, we do not.
Hold up, B.
No.
You're running the card.
God. Go to what? Oh, them little shit. That old McDonald's spirit came out?
Yeah.
It's in the crib. It's back. It's back. With the NFTs.
I'll drop a Luxury Suite as land for turn, and then play a Soul Ring. With my leftover mana, I'll cast a Black Market. At my end step, Derek will crack his Misty Rainforest, but Jelly will respond by casting Squelch to counter the fetch activation. Now this time on Derek's turn, he remembers to dredge the Stinkweed Imp, then plays a Mosswort Bridge and hides away a card. He'll then go ahead and cast his commander, Hogaak, before passing. Jelly plays another island for turn, and then casts a Reconnaissance Mission. Caleb seems to be recovering well despite missing land drops, now playing a Circuitous Route to go get a Forest and a Swamp. I'll play a Vault of Champions as land for turn, but my hand is a bit lackluster still, so I'll have to cast a Siphon Mine, letting me draw 3 cards with everyone else discarding 1, including Derek's Stinkweed Imp. Afterwards, I'll play an Arcane Signet, followed by a Zulaport Cutthroat. Derek will dredge his Stinkweed Imp on his turn, and then he'll start off by swinging Hogaak at me. I'll block with a Spirit, which will trigger Black Market and the Zulaport Cutthroat, but I'll still eat a chunk of commander damage. After combat, Derek will drop a Woodland Cemetery, and then cast a Disciple of Golos, choosing to sacrifice Hogaak to its effect. This triggers Black Market, and Derek will then recast Hogaak to wrap up his turn, discarding down the hand size. Jelly goes to his turn, and just empty passes. Caleb starts off his turn by casting his commander, Golos, using the ETB effect to get a Field of the Dead to the battlefield. He doesn't have enough different lands for it to trigger yet, and so he'll pass. On my turn, I'll start by trying to cast Increasing Devotion to make some tokens, but Jelly decides to cast a Narset's Reversal to bounce it back to my hand and cast it for himself. I'll then cast a Chromatic Lantern, and then I'll pass. Derek starts off his turn by dredging his Stinkweed Imp, and then he'll play a Strip Mine. He'll then swing Hogaak over at me again, and I'll block it with another Spirit. This will trigger the Zulaport and the Black Market again, but now I'm up to 14 commander damage. Derek will finish up his turn by casting a Skyshroud Claim to go get 2 forests. We now go over to Jelly, who goes to combat and swings the 5 human tokens over at me. He'll draw 5 from the Reconnaissance Mister triggers, and then drop an island for turn and cast a Gilded Lotus. On Caleb's turn, he'll dredge his Life in the Loam and then cast an Hour of Promise, getting a World Tree for the first land and a Cabal Coffers for the second. This triggers the field twice, and he'll follow it up by casting Life in the Loam to get back a Vesuva. He'll play the Vesuva as land for turn, copying the field and thus getting 2 additional zombies. At his end step, I have to cast a Desperation Plumb the Forbidden, sacking my Zulaport Cutthroat to draw a card. This triggers the Zulaport and the Black Market. Now on my turn, I have some floating black mana from the Black Market, and so I'll recast Increasing Devotion to make 5 human tokens, and then I'll cast a Pitiless Plunderer. I'll play a Battlefield Forge as land for turn, then I'll use my Skull Clamp on one of the human tokens. This will trigger the Black Market and the Pitiless Plunderer, and draw me some cards. Unfortunately, they're not good enough, and so I'll use the Skull Clamp again, and then have to pass after that. At my end step, Derek will activate his Mosswort Bridge, which gets him a Swamp into play. He'll then activate his Fauna Shaman, but Jelly will cast Trickbind to counter the activation, and then cast Rapid Hybridization on the Fauna Shaman. This gets Derek a Frog Lizard, and me a Black Market counter. Now Derek will go to his turn, and after being sufficiently annoyed by Jelly, he'll change his target for Hogaak, swinging 8 commander damage over to Jelly, who doesn't block. Derek will then cast a Toxic Deluge paying 5 life, which gets me a bunch of Pitiless Plunderer triggers, and even more Black Market counters, going up to 25. Derek then plays a Chittering Witch, making some rats, then uses his Strip Mine to destroy Caleb's Cabal Coffers. He'll play a Bojuka Bog as land for turn afterwards, exiling Caleb's graveyard, and getting a Bloodghast back to the battlefield before ending his turn. On Jelly's turn, he'll cast a Cage Sun, then follow it up with a Sapphire Medallion. He'll pass after that. We'll head over to Caleb, who's starting to get concerned by the rest of the board, and so he'll cast a Diabolic Revelation with X equaling 3 to tutor for 3 cards. Seeing an opportunity, I'll go ahead and cast Reiterate, paying for buyback, to let me copy the spell as well. However, Jelly will remand the Reiterate, not letting me get the copy off. Caleb then tutors for 3 cards, one of which he reveals to be a Bojuka Bog, which he plays as land for turn to exile Derek's graveyard. The second, he reveals to be a Nature's Claim, which he uses to destroy the Black Market before passing. With that missed opportunity, I go to my turn and I'll play a Phyrexian Tower as land for turn, and then I'll flashback Increasing Devotion, this time making 10 humans. On Derek's turn, he sees that Jelly's mana is tapped out, and so he'll attempt to go for a Craterhoof Behemoth. However, Jelly has a free counterspell ready, and he'll cast a Thwart, returning islands to his hand to pay the alternate casting cost. This makes the combat decision easy for Derek, and he swings Hogaak over at Jelly, who can't block. Now over to Jelly, who will replay one of the islands he bounced, and then he'll cast Talrand. He'll then cast Treasure Cruise, and choose to also cast Twin Cast to copy it, getting 2 Drake triggers and drawing 6 cards. We'll go back to Caleb now, who's going to tap down all of his mana and cast a Zakama. This is a huge threat, but unfortunately nobody has any responses to the cast, and so on ETB, Caleb will untap his lands, and then activate Zakama to shoot the Cage Sun. Jelly will cast a Dig Through Time in response while he still has double mana, making a Drake and drawing cards. Caleb then casts Kodama's Reach, getting a Swamp to the battlefield and a Swamp to his hand to play his land for turn, triggering his 2 fields twice before passing. At Caleb's end step, I figure I can't leave Zakama alive for the table, and so I cast an Anguish Unmaking on him, and Zakama will shoot my Skull Clamp and Talrand before he leaves forever. Now we're to my turn, and although I have tokens on board, I still don't have many big plays to make without leaving myself open to Hogaak on Derek's end. Instead, I'll cast a Night's Whisper, trying to draw more answers, and then I'll play a Swamp as land for turn. I'll then cast a Cruel Celebrant, and after giving it some thought, I uncharacteristically cast the front side of my commander, Extus. We're back over to Derek now, who's dead set on focus firing Jelly down. He'll go to combat and swing Hogaak at Jelly, who's forced to block with 3 Drakes. On his second main phase, Derek's going to cast the Life's Legacy, sacrificing Hogaak to draw 8 cards. Now I figure now is as good a time as any, and so I'll cast Reiterate with buyback to copy the Life's Legacy. This will get me 2 Extus triggers, getting me back a Pitiless Plunderer and the Zulaport Cutthroat from my graveyard to my hand. Derek then plays a Witch's Cottage as land for turn, and taps down to cast a Yawgmoth Thran Physician. This doesn't look good for my plans, but unfortunately I can't do much about it. Derek will finish off his turn by casting a Satyr Wayfinder, which fails to find. He has to discard at the end of his turn, and he pitches some cards that include a Nether Trader. Jelly starts his turn by playing an island as land for turn, and then he'll cast Ponder. At this point, Derek realizes that he forgot to recast Hogaak, which might have been Jelly's plan all along. Tensions are high as we move to turn 10, and so it's time for everyone to start making some moves to try to close out the game. Caleb casts an AC Tyrant of Gyra Strait, and follows it up with an Into the North, getting a Swamp. This triggers both fields and AC, as does the Farseek that Caleb cast afterwards to get a Savai Triome. He'll then play a Cascading Cataracts to get the same triggers, and then he'll consider going to combat.
I don't know if I should swing or not.
I'd swing at Derek.
Why? What does that do?
I don't know what it does.
Make him
I don't
angry.
think it does anything.
You don't like me when I'm angry.
I'm thinking about swinging at Jelly just to let it fucking end, man.
I'm gonna let y'all all fucking in later.
What, Jelly, you just counter all our
That's what I'm
spells.
saying. People want to do shit, Jelly. Like,
You want
you
this
wonder
everything
why
you
you die.
yeah.
You always try to stop us.
Oh, okay, so now we're gonna hate the blue mage.
Yes. and no one likes the blue mage.
You do one
No,
thing.
even the blue mage doesn't like himself. Like,
I do one thing,
You do one
and it's
thing.
disgusting.
It's disgusting. Right?
Now that Caleb's recognized the true villain of the tournament, he swings 6 zombies over at Jelly before ending his turn. Back to me, where I finally have some options, but I'm staring down the barrel of Yawgmoth. Without any concise way to get rid of it, unfortunately I have to play into it and hope for the best. I'll start off with a mountain as land for turn, then cast Pitiless Plunderer. I'll use Phyrexian Tower to sacrifice Extus for 2 black, which triggers the Plunderer and the Celebrant. However, Derek responds at this point by sacrificing 3 rats and the Bloodghast to Yawgmoth to kill the Pitiless Plunderer. With my commander back in the command zone now, I'll attempt to sacrifice 4 humans and pay to cast Awaken the Blood Avatar. The Cruel Celebrant triggers will kill Jelly here, and so in response, he casts a Factor Fiction, and Derek gives him a 5/0 split package that includes a Pact of Negation, which will cast to counter the Awaken the Blood Avatar. He'll also cast Peek to look at Caleb's hand before becoming the first person to be eliminated from the finals. Jelly didn't go out without one final annoyance, as now I have to recast Awaken the Blood Avatar, sacking my remaining tokens and also choosing to cast an Increasing Vengeance to copy the spell. This causes everyone else to have to sacrifice 2 creatures, and once the Blood Avatars are out, I'll cast a Chittering Witch to make some more tokens. Caleb responds to the cast, first by using a Swift End of my Cruel Celebrant. I'll then go to combat, swinging the Blood Avatars over at Derek, who blocks both and then sacks his own Chittering Witch for damage to kill one of my rats. On my second main phase, I'll try to clear out the board by casting a Toxic Deluge for 5, leaving me with just Blood Avatars left on the board. That board wipe, along with the misplay last turn, has left Derek in a pretty rough spot, and so on this turn he'll play a Swamp as land for turn, having the Bloodghast return. He'll then cast a Mind Slicer, followed by a Liliana Dreadhorde General. He's going to minus Lily, which causes everyone to sacrifice 2 creatures, and now, once the Mind Slicer dies, everyone's going to have to discard their hands. Derek will stack the triggers so that he draws after the Mind Slicer goes off, but things may have just taken a turn for the worst. Caleb starts his next turn off by casting Golos, getting a Marsh Flats with the ETB trigger. This gets both fields to trigger, and then he'll activate Golos, finding a Phyrexian Metamorph, a Cryptghast, and a Smoldering Marsh. He'll play the Smoldering Marsh as land for turn, getting 2 triggers from the field, and then he'll cast Cryptghast and cast the Phyrexian Metamorph, which he has come in as a copy of Cryptghast. He'll extort on that cast, draining everybody for 1. Caleb now has a ton of mana, and I unfortunately don't have a hand to deal with it. The only thing I can do on my turn is cast Extus again, hoping maybe to recoup some value on my turn. Derek's going to start off his turn by dredging a Golgari Grave Troll, and then he'll plus Lily to make a zombie. He'll play a Bloodstained Mire to get the Bloodghast back, and then actually cast a Golgari Grave Troll so that he can recast Hogaak. He'll finish up his turn by playing a Sylvan Library, and then pass. With Golos left unanswered and a ton of mana thanks to the 2 Cryptghast, we'll go back to Caleb. He'll start off his turn by playing an Amulet of Vigor, extorting twice. Next, he'll crack his Marsh Flats, getting a Zagoth Triome and 2 field triggers. Now he'll activate Golos, revealing a Beledros Witherbloom as the only playable card. However, that's still big trouble, and he'll play the Beledros, extorting twice again. Now he'll go for another activation of Golos, revealing a Tireless Tracker and a Damnation. He'll cast the Tireless Tracker and extort it, and desperate for an answer, I'll cast Village Rites, sacrificing Extus to try to draw an answer. I find nothing, and so the tracker will resolve, and now Caleb will get a final activation of Golos, now getting a rampant growth, merciless eviction, and a timeless witness. At this point, we realize that Caleb has enough mana to cast and extort all of these spells. Derek and I don't have the life totals to support this, and what life he can't cover with the extorts, he can swing in with his board to cover the difference. This means that Caleb will be your winner for Game 13 and your champion for the first season of the Grand Tournament. Well, there's a reason Golos was banned, right? I'm mostly joking, but you can see the raw power that the commander brought to the table, and the second we took our eyes off the deck, Caleb was able to get his game plan going without having much issue at all, even despite missing early land drops. The Mind Slicer sealed the deal for Caleb, as Golos is able to generate plenty of value without needing to have any cards in hand. Once Caleb found 2 mana doublers, the game was already over, with none of us having any real way to wipe the board and set Caleb back from that point. In previous games, we were able to hold Golos in check fairly well, but if you go back to watch the other episodes, it often took the whole table combining resources together to shut him down for good. This is not to detract at all from Caleb though, who fought hard through all 13 games to put himself in a winning position. This won't be the last time you see him around, so stay tuned what Caleb has in store for the future. He's already working on some decks to replace Golos, so I'm excited to see what he brings to the table to defend his Season 1 title. As for the rest of us, we'll start with Jelly. This is another non-performance for Talrand, and the deck is going to have to go through some major overhauls to make it less dependent on Talrand himself, and to have other ways to generate value. I'm not sure if Jelly ever had a chance in this last game, but he made sure to make his presence known like a buzzing mosquito. He played a lot of interaction, but unfortunately it was mostly in response to things that me and Derek did, including squelching one of Derek's fetch lands, rather than saving it for a future Golos activation. But that's sort of been par for the course for Jelly for this whole tournament. Derek and I may not have won the event, but if there's one moral victory for us, it was that we at least got to eliminate Jelly first. All that being said, having Jelly at the table was an enjoyable, albeit chaotic experience, and he'll certainly be back to wreak havoc on another tournament in the future. Speaking of Derek, this last game was certainly not his finest, and you could tell that Jelly had him a bit agitated. While Derek is usually cool and level-headed, he uncharacteristically missed some triggers and made some critical misplays. This game itself was not unlike Game 12, where Derek had an early vice grip on the board, but he was blocked out of winning by some timely interaction pieces and never recovered after that. The Mind Slicer play he made was a desperation move and a half to try to wrest back control, and although it ruined my hand, it was the right play for him to go for to try to find himself a way back into the game. Unfortunately, it didn't end up working out in his favor. Shout out to Derek regardless though for fighting his way back from 0 wins to come so close to taking home the gold. We're looking forward to see what else Derek will brew up for our later season. As for me, I couldn't turn the corner on what was looking to be a promising start. A lot of my early draws were empty, filled with lands and other card draw effects and nothing really to impact the board. I came close to having a huge turn with that black market at 25 counters, and I think I had the right idea by trying to copy Caleb's Diabolic Revelation. It would have let me tutor for 3 cards, and that certainly would have let me win the game. Jelly ended up remanning my copy spell, and while I did have enough mana to recast Reiterate without buyback, it turned out that Jelly had a free counterspell available anyway to stop me from winning had I gone for it. Ultimately, the Mind Slicer was the deciding factor in my ability to come back, as without a hand or any way to draw cards on the board, there was no chance for me to recover. But overall, I'd say this event was a ton of fun for us, and it was really interesting to see the game dynamics evolve over the course of each week. The format added a new strategic layer to Commander that you normally don't get to see, and I think the pod was well balanced and never got to the point of being overly spiky or cutthroat. I'd recommend you try it out with your own play group, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments about rules, or make up your own if you so choose. That'll bring this season of the Grand Tournament to a close, and so I want to thank everybody for following along. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be back with a new season later this year, featuring an all-new cast and all-new decks for you to root for. Stay tuned also for some bonus content, where I'll do a deep dive with our Season 1 cast about some of the decks that you saw get played in the tournament. If you want to get notified when that happens, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons and stay tuned for more. That's all I got for this episode, so congratulations again to Caleb, our Season 1 champion, and thanks again to everybody for watching.